I was 21 when my family decided I was their favorite punching bag one last time. We were driving through Texas, on our way to a funeral for an uncle I barely remembered, when my father pulled over at a dusty rest stop. It was one of those places with a single bathroom building, 2 broken vending machines, and a lot of nothing stretching out in every direction. I thought he just needed to stretch his legs. I had no idea he was about to change the rest of my life. "Out," he said, looking at me through the rearview mirror. His voice was casual, almost playful, but there was an edge to it. "Go walk a bit. You look restless." My brother snorted from the front seat. My mother kept her eyes fixed on the road ahead, pretending she didn't hear. I should have known better. But I stepped out anyway. I had no phone on me because it was charging in the car. No wallet, because why would I need it just to use the restroom? I thought I'd be gone for 2 minutes. I walked around the side of the building, stretched my back, splashed some water on my face. The heat was already suffocating, and I remember thinking I couldn't wait to get back into the air conditioning. But when I stepped out again, the parking lot was empty. An old minivan was gone. At first, I laughed. I figured it was one of their jokes. They'd pull back in, all of them laughing at how I panicked. So I sat on the curb and waited. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. I walked around the building, thinking maybe they parked on the other side. Nothing. Just empty space and the distant hum of trucks speeding by on the highway. Slowly, my smile faded. That's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't crash into you all at once. It seeps in like ice water, first chilling your stomach, then creeping up your spine until you can't breathe. An hour later, I was still sitting there, trying to convince myself they'd come back. People gave me strange looks. A trucker asked if I was okay. I lied. Said I was waiting for a friend. He nodded and drove off. By the second hour, I knew. They weren't coming back. I replayed every moment of that trip in my head. The snide remarks from my brother. The way my dad smirked when I asked him to stop belittling me. My mother's silence. I could almost hear them now, driving away, laughing about it. Let's see if he can make it back on his own. Bet he's crying already. They thought it was funny. I had 2 choices. Sit there until I collapsed from the heat, or move. A woman with 2 kids finally pulled in, and I forced myself to approach her. My voice shook when I asked if I could borrow her phone. I didn't call my family. I called a shelter in the nearest town, 40 miles away. Then I asked her for a ride. She hesitated, looked at her kids, then finally agreed. That's how I ended up in the back of her car, staring out the window at endless desert, realizing that everything I thought I knew about family was gone. The shelter was small, crowded, and smelled faintly of bleach. They gave me a bed, a donated t-shirt, and a plate of spaghetti that tasted like salt and metal. That night, lying on a thin mattress, I made a decision. I wasn't going back. Not now. Not ever. The next morning, I walked into a diner called Marlene's Kitchen and asked if they needed help. The owner, a woman with steel gray hair and tattooed arms, looked me up and down and said, "Dishwasher quit yesterday. Don't steal from me and you can start now." Just like that, I had a job. My hands stung from the hot water, and my feet ached from standing, but when I walked out that night with a few dollars in my pocket, I felt something I hadn't in years. Freedom. 3 days later, my mother called the shelter. I don't know how she found the number. Her voice shook with fake panic. "Where are you?" "We've been looking everywhere. It was just a joke. Your father didn't mean it. Come back." In the background, I heard my brother laughing. My father saying, "Tell him to stop being dramatic." Something inside me snapped. I gripped the phone so tight my knuckles turned white. Then I said the only words that mattered. You wanted to see if I could make it on my own? Watch me. And I hung up. I didn't answer again. Not that night. Not ever. That was the day my old life ended, and my real life began. For years, I had been the invisible son, the unwanted burden, the easy target for their cruelty. But being abandoned forced me into something else. I learned how to survive. I learned how to stand up without anyone holding me. And I promised myself, with every fiber of my being, that when they finally came looking, I would not be the same broken kid they left behind. That promise carried me through sleepless nights at the shelter, through double shifts at the diner, through the loneliness that chewed at me every time I saw another family together. It carried me until I stopped being the boy they laughed at, and became someone else entirely. And 15 years later, when they finally found me, that promise was the only thing that kept me standing. When you walk away from the wreckage of your family, the first days are pure survival. Eat. Sleep. Work. Repeat. I washed dishes at Marlene's kitchen until my fingers cracked and bled. I scrubbed pans so black with grease they looked older than me. And every night, when the shelter lights went out, I lay awake with one thought: I will never crawl back. That thought kept me moving. It gave me fuel. The owner, Marlene, didn't waste words. She was in her 60s, tough as nails, with purple streaks in her grey hair. The kind of woman who could lift a fryer basket with one arm while lighting a cigarette with the other. After a week of dishwashing, she tossed me a paring knife and said, "Don't cut off your fingers. We are short on prep cooks." That's how I learned to chop onions until my eyes burned so bad I couldn't see. How to dice tomatoes, peel potatoes, crack eggs one-handed because two-handed was too slow. I wasn't good at it. Not at first. But I was fast, and I kept showing up. That counted for something. The shelter gave me a bed, but I wanted more. After 2 weeks of double shifts, I rented a room above a laundromat. One window. Thin walls. The smell of fabric softener so strong it felt like I was living inside a dryer sheet. But it was mine. For the first time in my life, I had a door that locked, a key that belonged only to me. That's when the calls started. First, it was my mother. Her voice soft, begging. "Come home. We didn't mean it. It was a mistake." I didn't answer. Then my father. His voice hard, commanding. "Enough of this nonsense. You've made your point. Get back here before you ruin your life." Still, I stayed silent. My brother left a voicemail that lasted 2 minutes. All laughter. "Dude, you've really committed to the bit. Guess you're finally good for something, being the family joke." I deleted every message. Changed my number. Bought a cheap prepaid phone from a gas station. And with that, the cord was cut. Some nights, I questioned myself. I'd sit on my mattress staring at the ceiling, the hum of washing machines below me rattling through the floorboards, and wonder if I'd gone too far. If I'd regret burning every bridge. Then I'd remember the heat of that rest stop, the emptiness of that parking lot, the way my father's eyes looked in the review mirror as he told me to get out. That memory killed the doubt every time. Work became my lifeline. Marlene started trusting me with more, plating orders, running the line when it got busy. She never smiled, but one day she clapped me on the shoulder and muttered, "Not bad, kid." That 2-second gesture meant more to me than 20 years of my father's words. Money trickled in. Enough for groceries. Enough for a cheap laptop from a pawn shop. I started taking night classes at the community college, business management, accounting, basic things I thought might one day matter. The kind of classes my father used to sneer at. For people who can't do real work, he'd say. I went anyway. Months passed. Slowly, I built a routine. Wake up at dawn. Work a shift at the diner. Classes at night. Study until exhaustion dragged me under. Rinse. Repeat. No family. No drama. Just forward motion. But here's the thing about silence, it leaves space for the past to sneak back in. One night, after closing the diner, I checked my old email account. The one my family still had. Dozens of unread messages sat there like landmines. My mother's desperate apologies. My father's furious demands. My brother's mocking taunts. I should have deleted them all, but I read every one. And when I finished, I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel sorrow. I felt something sharper. Clarity. They hadn't changed. They weren't sorry. They were angry because I refused to play my role. They wanted their punching bag back. I wasn't giving it to them. So I deleted the account. For good. That night, Marlene taught me how to make her apple pie. She stood over me like a drill sergeant, barking orders as I fumbled with the crust. My hands shook, but when the pie came out of the oven golden brown, she actually smiled. "You've got good hands for pastry," she said. It was the first real compliment I could remember receiving in years. That pie became my turning point. It sounds stupid, I know. But when you grow up starving for kindness, the smallest crumb feels like a feast. That night, I realized I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was learning how to live. 5 years passed before I saw their names again. It came through a news article on Facebook. My brother, Alan, arrested for a DUI. Mugshot plastered beside his old football photo. The golden child, bloated and broken. My father's hardware store closed after a Home Depot opened nearby. My mother posting endless family photos online, tagging everyone but me. As if I'd never existed. I stared at that screen for a long time, waiting to feel something. Anger. Satisfaction. Maybe even sadness. But the truth was, I felt nothing. Their lives were crumbling, and I was still standing. That was enough. By then, I had worked my way up to assistant manager at Marlene's Kitchen. I had savings. A decent apartment. Even a few friends, my neighbor Doug, who brewed terrible beer in his bathtub, and Marlene herself, who treated me like a stray cat she'd accidentally adopted. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Then one Tuesday afternoon, she walked in. Her name was Kendra. A med student. She ordered the same thing every time, a Denver omelet, no tomatoes, extra coffee. Always sat at the counter with a textbook open, fork frozen halfway to her mouth while she got lost in her studies. I started timing her once, 7 minutes and 23 seconds before she realized her eggs had gone cold. It became a routine. Her studying. My refilling her coffee. A glance. A smile. A joke about her order. Nothing big. Nothing serious. But for the first time in years, I felt the faint flicker of something I'd buried long ago. Hope. And that's when everything began to change again. Kendra didn't notice me at first. To her, I was just another face behind the counter, a guy in a stained apron who kept her coffee hot while she drowned in medical textbooks. But to me, she was impossible to ignore. She had this focused energy, like the world outside her book barely existed. Some people study with intensity. She studied with fire. Week after week, she came in. Denver omelet, no tomatoes, extra coffee. Always the same. Always at the counter. Always with that furrowed brow, chewing on her pen cap like she was trying to bite knowledge straight out of the page. I started small. A joke here. A comment there. Pointing out when she'd left her fork in midair so long the food had gone cold. She'd laugh softly, barely looking up, then dive back into her work. For months, that was it. Coffee refills and half smiles. Until one night. It was a Thursday, near closing. She sat there longer than usual, tapping her phone with a frown. Finally, she sighed. Well, looks like my study group bailed on me. And I already have this reservation at Antonio's. It's one of those impossible to get into places. Now it's just me. I don't know what possessed me, but the words left my mouth before I could stop them. I'm off in 10 minutes. I'll go with you. She looked up, surprised. Her eyes studied me like she was seeing me for the first time. And then she said, "All right." Why not? That night became our first date, though we didn't call it that. Antonio's was loud, packed with people in nicer clothes than mine, but Kendra didn't seem to care. We talked about everything. Her grueling classes. My endless hours at the diner. The fact that I hadn't seen my family in years. She didn't flinch when I admitted it. She just nodded, like she understood more than she said. By the end of the night, I felt something I hadn't felt since before that rest stop. Connection. We started seeing each other regularly after that. Coffee at the diner turned into study sessions in her apartment. Study sessions turned into dinners. Dinners turned into long nights where I finally let myself laugh again. But love, real love, is dangerous when you've spent your whole life being told you don't deserve it. I kept waiting for the catch. The moment she'd see the cracks in me and decide I wasn't worth it. One night, lying beside her, I confessed it. They left me, Kendra. At a rest stop. Just drove away. And I didn't go back. Her hand tightened around mine. She didn't say I was overreacting. She didn't try to explain it away. She just whispered, "Then they don't deserve you." Simple words. But they broke something open in me. For the first time, I believed maybe she was right. The months turned into a year. Kendra moved into my apartment. We scraped by, her juggling classes, me working double shifts. It wasn't glamorous. The walls still smelled like fabric softener. The neighbors still practiced guitar at midnight. But together, it felt like home. Meanwhile, I couldn't resist the pull of the past. Late at night, when Kendra slept, I scrolled through social media on fake accounts. Watching my family from a distance. My father's hardware store collapsing under the weight of competition. His online rants, bitter and venomous, about how corporations were ruining honest businesses. My mother's endless posts about family, plastered with smiling photos from decades ago, photos where I was still included, like she was trying to rewrite history. And Alan. Always Alan. Job hopping. Posting cryptic messages about haters. Pretending he was thriving while the truth bled through every word. It should have made me angry. It should have made me feel vindicated. Instead, it made me feel nothing. Like I'd already cut the cord so completely that their chaos no longer touched me. But the past has sharp teeth. And it doesn't let go easily. One afternoon, Marlene pulled me into the back office. She'd been running the numbers, cigarette dangling from her lips, calculator smudged with flour. "I'm thinking of opening a second location," she said, not looking up. "East side of town. I'll need someone to run it. You interested?" For a second, I thought she was joking. Me? Run a restaurant? That was for people with degrees, people with confidence, people who didn't grow up being told they were worthless. But then I saw the look in her eyes. Serious. Steady. Trusting. And I realized she believed in me more than I believed in myself. That night, I told Kendra. She grinned, half asleep, hair spilling over the pillow. "If you don't take it, you're an idiot," she murmured, then drifted off. Doug, my neighbor, just said, "Duh. You already run the place anyway." So I said yes. And that decision changed everything. Sunny's East opened 6 months later. Smaller. Different menu. My menu. I worked 90-hour weeks, dropping weight I couldn't afford to lose. Fought with Kendra more than once about never being home. Came back to passive-aggressive notes on the fridge. But it worked. People came. They came back. The food was good. The vibe was better. We weren't rich, but we were building something. A life. A future. And just when I thought the past was finally fading, news hit me like a punch to the chest. My grandmother died. She was the only one in my family who ever saw me. The only one who slipped me $20 bills when nobody was looking. The only one who whispered, "Save it for your escape." I think she meant college. But it turned out to be much more literal. I thought about going to the funeral. Even looked up flights. Kendra said she'd come with me. Doug offered his beat-up car if I wanted to drive. Marlene shrugged and said, "Dead people don't know if you're there. Do what brings you peace." In the end, I didn't go. Instead, I sent flowers. No note. Just my name. Salvador. The explosion online was immediate. My mother posting about signs from beyond. Alan making cryptic comments about prodigal sons. My father silent, but I could imagine the storm behind closed doors. A week later, a friend request appeared from a strange account. No posts. No photos. Just a message. "It's Uncle Rick. Your mom gave me your old email, but it bounced. Are you okay? We've been worried. Your dad's been asking around." I blocked it. That night, panic wrapped around me like barbed wire. For the first time in years, I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Sat on the bathroom floor at 3 in the morning, trying not to wake Kendra, convinced my father would show up at my door any second. When she found me there, she didn't ask questions. She just sat down beside me, her shoulder touching mine. And when I finally whispered, "What if they come for me?" she said the simplest thing. "They can't take anything from you that you don't give them." That sentence became my anchor. My shield. Because I knew, whether they knocked tomorrow or 10 years from now, my family wasn't gone. They were waiting in the tall grass. Waiting to strike. And I had to be ready. 5 years had passed since that rest stop. 5 years of silence. 5 years of building a life from scratch. By then, Kendra had finished med school, and we were finally breathing easier. We'd moved into a slightly bigger place, 2 bedrooms, a kitchen that didn't leak, a bathroom where the toilet didn't run all night. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. Sunny's East was thriving. I worked like a machine, but it paid off. We had regulars, good reviews, a steady flow of customers. Marlene, still tough as ever, had started treating me less like a lost kid and more like family. A real family. The kind you choose. For the first time, I felt safe. Stable. Almost happy. Then it happened. It started with a LinkedIn notification. A name I hadn't seen in 15 years. Alan. My brother. At first, I thought it was some mistake. A glitch. But then I saw it, he had viewed my profile 27 times in one day. The past doesn't knock politely. It barges in, dripping poison. I mentioned it to Kendra that night. We were folding laundry, watching some mindless show, when I said, "Alan's been looking at my LinkedIn." She froze, socks in her hands, and asked, "Are you okay?" I nodded, but I wasn't. Inside, I was 21 again. Back at that rest stop. Sun burning my skin. Stomach hollow with fear. 3 days later, it got worse. I was at Sunny's East, sorting out an inventory mess, when Maya, one of the servers, called back, "Sal, there's family here to see you." My heart sank. I thought she meant Kendra's parents, who sometimes surprised us with visits. But when I stepped out, I saw them. My father. My mother. Alan. And a woman I didn't recognize, hanging back like she didn't belong. Time froze. The clatter of dishes, the buzz of conversation, all of it faded until all I could hear was my own heartbeat. My father looked older. Smaller. His frame, once so imposing, had shrunk. His hair was thin, his face lined. But his eyes were the same. Hard. Cold. My mother looked worn down. Pinched. Hair dyed too dark, makeup trying and failing to cover the years. Alan, he looked like my father at 40. Same stance. Same arrogance. Only softer around the edges, bloated, tired. The young woman turned out to be his wife. Second wife. Poppy. She stayed quiet, eyes flicking around like she wasn't sure how she'd ended up in the middle of this. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then my father said my name. Not like a statement. Like a question. Testing the air. I nodded once. My voice wouldn't come. I gestured to an empty table in the corner. Maya brought water. We sat down. I waited. And then the performance began. My mother started crying, saying how worried they'd been. My father launched into a speech about misunderstandings, about how what happened that day at the rest stop wasn't what I thought. Alan tried to play the buddy act, grinning like we were just catching up after years apart. I said nothing. Just listened. Watched. I noticed the way my father's eyes kept drifting around the restaurant. Calculating. Measuring. Like he was already putting a price tag on the life I'd built. I noticed how my mother's hand trembled every time she reached for her water glass. How she couldn't quite meet my eyes. I noticed how Alan's charm cracked whenever he thought I wasn't looking, his jaw tightening, his smile fading. When their words finally ran dry, I asked the only question that mattered. Why now? Silence. Then the truth came out. My father had health problems. No insurance. The second house had been foreclosed. My mother needed knee surgery she couldn't afford. Alan had tried to start some kind of crypto business. It collapsed, leaving them drowning in debt. They hadn't come for reconciliation. They had come for money. I should have been furious. I should have thrown them out. But sitting there, looking at them, so small, so desperate, I felt something else. Pity. These giants of my childhood. The people who once controlled my world with fear and cruelty. They weren't giants anymore. They were broken. I told them I'd think about it. Invited them to dinner at my house that night. My father's eyes lit up like he'd already won. That afternoon was surreal. I picked Ellie up from her dance class. Helped Marcus with his preschool project. All while texting Kendra updates. She offered to take the kids to her sister's place, but I said no. I wanted them there. I wanted my family, the one I built, to meet the family that tried to destroy me. Dinner was simple. Chicken enchiladas. Ellie set the table, forks on the wrong side until Kendra corrected her gently. Marcus insisted on wearing his Spider-Man costume because, in his world, Tuesdays belonged to Spider-Man. When the doorbell rang, I almost dropped the dish. Kendra squeezed my arm as she passed, whispering, "I've got your back." Introductions were awkward. My father kept calling Kendra Karen. My mother cried whenever she looked at the kids, which made Marcus hide behind his chair. Alan and Poppy were the least awful, actually trying to make conversation. But every few minutes, Alan dropped hints. Family helps family. After dinner, Kendra took the kids upstairs for baths. It was just me and them, sitting in the living room that suddenly felt too small. That's when my father leaned forward, voice low. We just need 20,000. A loan. Family takes care of family. I stared at him. For a long time. Then I asked, do you remember what you said to me on my 18th birthday? He blinked. Didn't answer. I reminded him. You said, at least you can't disappoint me anymore once you're not legally my problem. I turned to my mother. Do you remember what you did when you tore up my acceptance letter to community college? She looked down. Silent. I turned to Alan. Do you remember telling my first girlfriend I was probably gay, just to humiliate me? His jaw tightened. The mask slipped. Finally, I stood. Walked into my office. Came back with an envelope. Handed it to my father. He opened it. Inside was a check. $73.50. He frowned. What the hell is this supposed to be? I looked him in the eye. My voice steady. Clear. That's the exact cost of a Greyhound ticket from Grand Junction back to our hometown. The price it would have taken for me to get home the day you left me behind. That's all you're getting from me. The silence that followed was heavy. Thick. Then my father exploded. Shouting. Calling me ungrateful. Selfish. A disappointment. The greatest hits of my childhood, played one last time. I didn't argue. I didn't shout back. I just stood there, steady, as the storm raged. Finally, I said, it's time to leave. My mother cried harder. Alan's face went cold. Poppy looked embarrassed. My father crumpled the check and threw it on the floor. They walked out. I locked the door behind them, legs trembling. Kendra came downstairs, touched my hand, asked if I was okay. I nodded, though my voice wouldn't come. Later, I checked the security camera. They were still in the driveway, arguing. My father gesturing wildly. My mother sobbing. Alan staring at the house with an expression I knew too well. Envy mixed with hatred. Eventually, they drove away. And I knew, whether I ever saw them again or not, this chapter was closed. The best revenge wasn't a fight. It wasn't a screaming match. It was this. Every laugh with my kids. Every quiet Sunday with Kendra. Every ordinary day in a life I built on my terms. I never made it back home. I did something better. I built one. After that night, I thought it was over. I told myself the door was closed, the chapter finished, the ghosts buried. But ghosts don't stay down. They claw back up when you least expect it. A week after the confrontation, I opened my email. Not my main account. A dummy one I'd created years ago, just in case. Sitting there was a message from my Uncle Rick. Or at least, someone claiming to be him. Your mom gave me this address. We just want to know you're okay. Your dad has been asking around. My chest tightened. My hands shook. I deleted it instantly. But the damage was already done. For days, I jumped at every knock, every unfamiliar car outside the restaurant, convinced my father was coming to tear everything apart. That fear grew until it broke me. One night, I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. My chest felt like it was collapsing in on itself. I slid down to the bathroom floor, gripping the sink, trying not to make a sound. Kendra found me there an hour later. She didn't push. Didn't demand explanations. She just sat beside me, shoulder to shoulder, until I could breathe again. When I finally whispered, "What if they come back?" She said, calm and certain, "They can't take anything you don't give them." Those words became my armor. The next morning, I called a lawyer. Asked about restraining orders. Asked about protecting my business, my family. The lawyer explained the steps. Practical. Cold. Comforting. I tightened privacy settings on everything. Warned Marlene and the staff not to share information with anyone who asked about me. Small measures, but they gave me back control. Control. That was the word I'd never had in my parents' house. And now, finally, it was mine. Life moved forward. Slowly, steadily, I built around the cracks in me. Sunny's East survived its rocky first year. Kendra graduated med school, began her residency, and eventually settled into a position at a local clinic. She cut her hours down when our first child was born. Ellie. A baby girl with Kendra's wide eyes and my stubborn jaw. Holding her for the first time felt like holding proof that my family's poison hadn't destroyed me. That something good could still come from me. 2 years later, Marcus arrived. Loud. Restless. A ball of energy who made me laugh in ways I didn't think I could. We moved again. A modest house on the edge of town. A yard. A swing set. A life that felt like mine. And for years, I let myself believe maybe the ghosts had finally faded. Until they didn't. It started with whispers. A customer at Sunny's mentioned that a man had come by asking questions about me. Said he was looking for his son. Said there was a family emergency. My stomach turned cold. Then I saw it myself. On a community Facebook page, under a grainy photo of me from a local magazine article, my father had posted. Looking for information about my son Salvador. Last known location, Grand Junction. Please help. Family emergency. There was no emergency. Not for me. Whatever storm they were facing, it wasn't mine anymore. But the post rattled me. Not because I cared about what they wanted. But because I realized how easily the past could try to sneak back in through cracks I thought were sealed. I didn't respond. I didn't reach out. Instead, I closed the laptop, turned off the lights, and went upstairs to where Kendra was reading to Ellie and Marcus. I watched them, listened to their laughter, and reminded myself, this is my family now. This is my home. 5 years to the day after being abandoned, I married Kendra. It wasn't a big wedding. Just a small ceremony at a state park. Doug, my neighbor-turned-friend, was my best man. Marlene baked the cake, crying the whole time even as she barked orders at everyone. Kendra's family filled the air with laughter, hugs, warmth. Her father told dad jokes that somehow didn't make me flinch. Her mother hugged me so tightly I almost cried. For the first time in my life, I felt what family was supposed to mean. But even on that day, even in that joy, I couldn't shake the weight of one truth. The past doesn't just disappear. It waits. It watches. And 15 years after that rest stop, it found me again. This time, not with an email. Not with a Facebook post. But face to face. I was at Sunny's East, helping with a shipment, when Maya called back, "Sal, there's someone asking for you up front." I walked out, wiping my hands on a rag, already preparing my smile for Kendra's parents. But it wasn't them. It was my father. My mother. Alan. And beside him, a younger woman I didn't know. His new wife. They looked different. Older. Smaller. But the effect was the same. One glance, and I was 21 again, standing in that rest stop, watching the car pull away. My father spoke my name. Just one word. My mother's eyes brimmed with tears. Alan smirked like he owned the room. And I realized the truth I'd been running from for years. The past hadn't come back to visit. It had come back to collect. Seeing them standing in my restaurant was like watching ghosts crawl out of the grave. My father. My mother. Alan. And beside him, his new wife, Poppy. They didn't belong here. Not in the place I had built with my own hands. Not in the space I had carved out of survival. For a moment, I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. My throat closed, my chest burned. Then my body remembered. I had survived worse. I had survived them. So I nodded once. Calm. Controlled. And I told Maya to seat them at a table in the corner. We sat in silence at first. My mother cried. My father cleared his throat, staring at the wood grain on the table like it had answers. Alan leaned back in his chair, smirking like nothing had ever happened. Finally, my father spoke. We saw the article. About your restaurants. You've done well for yourself. His voice was flat. Not proud. Calculating. I didn't answer. My mother jumped in. We've missed you, Salvador. Every day. Not a moment goes by, her voice cracked. Tears slid down her cheeks. I studied her carefully. Was it guilt? Regret? Or just performance? I'd grown up watching her cry while doing nothing to stop my father. Those tears had always been cheap. Alan leaned forward. Come on, man. 15 years? Don't you think it's time to let bygones be bygones? His grin widened. We were kids. Dad was strict, sure, but we are still family, right? That word. Family. It hit me like a blade. I let them talk. Let them weave their story. A story where they weren't villains, where that day at the rest stop had been a misunderstanding. My mother said they turned around but couldn't find me. My father claimed it was a test that had gotten out of hand. Alan laughed and said, Man, you always were too sensitive. Every word was poison dressed as truth. Finally, I asked the question that burned in my chest. Why now? The mask cracked. My father's face tightened. He cleared his throat again. I've had some health issues. Medical bills. We are struggling. My mother whispered, the house is gone. Foreclosed. Alan's smirk faltered for just a second. Business fell through. Just need a little help to get back on track. And then the number came. $20,000. A loan, they called it. Family helping family. I almost laughed. Instead, I leaned back. Silent. Watching them squirm in the silence. Finally, I stood up. Went to my office. Returned with an envelope. Set it in front of my father. He opened it. Inside was a check for $73.50. His brow furrowed. What the hell is this? I met his eyes. That's the exact price of a Greyhound ticket from Grand Junction back to our hometown. The cost of the ride home, the day you left me at that rest stop. That's all you getting from me. The room froze. Then my father erupted. His voice thundered, spewing the same venom I had swallowed my whole childhood. Ungrateful. Selfish. A disappointment. After all we did for you. I didn't flinch. I didn't shout back. I just stood there, calm, steady, while the storm raged. My mother sobbed, begging me to reconsider. Alan's smile vanished, replaced with cold fury. Poppy shifted uncomfortably, looking like she wanted to disappear. Finally, I said the words I'd waited 15 years to say. Get out. Silence. Then the scrape of chairs. My father crumpled the check in his fist, tossed it to the floor, and stormed out. My mother followed, weeping. Alan lingered, his eyes burning into mine. For a moment, I thought he might lash out. Instead, he smirked again, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You'll regret this," he said softly. Then he turned and left. The door closed behind them. My legs trembled. My hands shook. But inside, something shifted. The boy they had abandoned was gone. The man who stood in their place no longer feared them. That night, Kendra held me as I replayed it all in my head. "You did the right thing," she whispered. "They can't take anything from you anymore." And I wanted to believe her. I really did. But deep down, I knew Alan's words weren't just a threat. They were a promise. Because the past doesn't walk away quietly. It lingers. It waits. And sometimes, it comes back sharper than before. The night after I threw them out, sleep came in broken pieces. Every creak in the house sounded like footsteps. Every passing headlight painted the ceiling like a silent alarm. I lay there, counting Kendra's breaths, telling myself the same sentence over and over like a prayer, "They can't take anything you don't give them." Morning helped. It usually did. Kids are gravity. Ellie demanded a ribbon for her hair that matched absolutely nothing. Marcus announced he was, in fact, a T-Rex today and could not be expected to use forks. Normal. Loud. Messy. A life made of small, steady truths. At the restaurant, I pretended nothing had happened. Orders, vendors, schedules, a fryer that ran hot, a prep list that never got shorter. Work is mercy when your mind wants to spiral. By lunch, the rhythm had almost convinced me that last night was a bad dream. Then Maya pulled me aside. "A guy was in earlier," she said, voice low. "Asking what time your kids get out of school." The floor tilted. "What did you tell him?" "Nothing," she said. "I told him we don't give out personal info." He left, but he said he was family. Small, steady truths cracked. I called Kendra. Her voice stayed calm, but I could hear the tightness in it. "I'll pick them up early," she said. "And I'll talk to the clinic about tightening call screening." By the time my hands stopped shaking, I'd already called the lawyer. I went step by step, clinical, detached, statements, dates, names, the request for a temporary order. "Sign here. We'll file today. Breathe." That night, we sat at the kitchen table like we were planning a storm route. No panic. Just plans. We changed passwords. Enabled two-factor authentication on everything. I reviewed the security cameras. We set up a code word with the kids in case anyone tried to pick them up. "It's just a game," Kendra told them, smiling. "Spy stuff." Ellie squealed. Marcus roared his T-Rex approval. Control. It was a thin blanket, but it was warm. The next morning, the smear campaign began. A post on a community page, "A funny how some people forget where they came from." Then another, "Abandoning your family should be a crime." New accounts with old patterns. A stranger messaged the restaurant page with a fake complaint, "Our owner screamed at my kids." We pulled footage. We saved screenshots. We documented every lie like it was a receipt. Marlene came in mid-afternoon, took one look at my face, and flicked ash into the parking lot like she was making an offering to the gods of patience. "You tell me if you need me to throw anyone out," she said. "I'm not retiring from that." I laughed. It sounded like a cough. "You already retired from everything else." "Not from you." She squeezed my shoulder. Her hand was small, knuckles scarred, warm as an oven. "Not from you, kid." Word got around faster than gossip deserves. Regulars started saying, "We got you." The coffee roaster tossed in a free pallet. A neighboring bakery left a tray of pastries by accident. None of it fixed anything, but it stacked up like sandbags against a rising river. 2 days later, Alan called the clinic where Kendra worked. Claimed to be a patient. Left a review about unprofessional behavior. It didn't stick. Her record is clean, her colleagues loyal, but that wasn't the point. The point was pressure. Squeeze here, squeeze there. See what leaks. That night, after the kids fell asleep, I opened the box I keep at the back of my closet. Paperwork. Old pay stubs from the shelter years. The first lease in my name. The photo of me and Kendra outside the county building after we bought the house. We look like two kids who found a map nobody else believed was real. Underneath it all, a bus ticket I never used. Grand Junction home. I'd bought it, once, in a moment of weakness, then torn it in half and taped it back together to remind myself, I choose the return I want. I held that ticket like it was a compass. Then I put it away. The temporary order was granted the next morning. Service would take time. Paperwork always does. But it was something. A line on a map. A border with teeth. Alan didn't knock on the line. He danced on it. A block number calling at 2:13 a.m., then hanging up. A car idling across the street for just long enough to count to 50 before it rolled away. A gift left on our porch, an old football trophy that wasn't mine, a relic from his high school glory, the base scratched with a pocket knife, a family first. I didn't touch it. I took a photo and called the police. The report was polite, professional, brief. I watched an officer drop the trophy into a bag like a dead thing. It felt appropriate. Do we tell the kids? Kendra asked that night, rinsing plates that already looked clean. We tell them what they need to feel safe, I said. Not a syllable more. So we told them the alarm code was a superpower. We told them the camera on the porch was a robot helper. We told them that adults act weird when they're tired and that none of it was their fault. Marcus asked if he could roar at the robot helper. I said yes. He did. The camera took it well. A week passed. The little horrors became routine. Like living next to a construction site that never poured a single foundation but rattled your windows day and night. We were tired, but we were steady. Then Poppy called. I let it go to voicemail. She called again. Then texted. Please. I know you don't owe us anything. But I need to talk to you. Not about money. About safety. I stared at the message until the words blurred. Then I walked outside, paced the length of the porch, and called back. Kendra stood in the doorway, arms folded, watching me with the quiet strength that has saved my life more times than I can count. Poppy's voice shook. I didn't know it would be like this, she said. Your brother, he's not sleeping. He's drinking. He keeps saying he'll make you pay. He keeps saying, he'll take back what's his. What does that mean? My mouth went dry. I don't know, she said, and I believed her. There was a kind of ruin you can hear even over a good connection. But I found a printout of your kid's school calendar in his car. The world narrowed to a pinhole. I sat down before I realized I was falling. Listen to me, I said. You are going to text me your address and the make and plate of his car. Then you are going to get somewhere public. Not alone. Not with him. Do you understand? Yes. A breath. I'm sorry. For what? For not stopping him, she whispered. For thinking he was just loud. After the call, I gave the information to the lawyer and the police. Something clicked in the system. Speed replaced molasses. By evening, the order had teeth in the real world. A deputy I'd never met stood on my porch, nodded at the camera that had survived Marcus's roar, and said, "We served him." How'd he take it? I asked. like a man with a mirror pointed at him, the deputy said. Badly. That night, the house felt too small to hold everything in my chest. Fear. Rage. Relief. Guilt for even the smallest drop of pity. I walked the hallway like a sentry while Kendra read on the couch and fell asleep with a book open on her chest. I tucked a blanket around her and stood at the window, watching the dark street. Waiting for a car that didn't come. Listening for footsteps that never sounded. At 1:47 a.m., my phone lit up face down on the sill. A text from an unknown number. No threats. No slurs. Just a photo. My torn bus ticket, the halves separated now, laid out on a table beside a lighter. Beneath it, a single line of text, "You should have taken the ride." I stared at the screen until my reflection looked like a stranger. Then I powered the phone off, set it aside, and went upstairs. I stood in the doorway of my kids' room long enough to memorize the way they breathed. The way safety has a sound. Back in our room, I slid under the covers. Kendra shifted in her sleep, found my hand without waking, and held it like a vow. I closed my eyes and chose my map again. The one where the road doesn't bend back toward the people who left me. The one where I draw the borders by hand. The one where the house we built isn't a destination. It's a promise. Morning would come. And with it, whatever the past wanted next. But when it knocked again, I would answer with more than a door. I would answer with a life. The morning after that photo text, the world looked the same. Sunlight through the blinds. Cereal bowls clattering on the table. Marcus roaring because his spoon wasn't the right spoon. But underneath it all was a hum I couldn't silence. The kind of hum you only notice when danger has already knocked on the door. I didn't tell the kids about the message. They didn't need that poison in their heads. But Kendra knew. She always knew. When she saw my face, she closed the fridge slowly, set her hands on the counter, and said, "We'll get through this. Together." Her calm wasn't fake. That's what made it powerful. She never minimized the threat. She never exaggerated it. She just looked it in the eye and said, "And not today." The police followed up with Poppy's information. Statements, documentation, another report logged in a system that already had too much ink in my name. The deputy who'd served Alan stopped by again. He leaned against his cruiser and said, "He's angry. But anger burns fuel fast. Stay steady. Keep records. Don't feed it." Easy words. Hard practice. Because Alan wasn't disappearing. He couldn't. His ego was a hook with no release. The smear campaign online kept spreading. Anonymous posts on neighborhood pages. Whispered stories in local forums. Some claimed I had stolen from my own family. Others said I'd faked my success. A few got darker, claims that Kendra was unfaithful, that my kids weren't really mine. The lies weren't clever, but lies don't need to be clever. They just need to echo long enough to sound like truth. I wanted to fight back. Wanted to scream into the same digital void until my throat bled. But Kendra stopped me. She touched my hand and said, "Every second you spend answering them is a second you give back. Don't give them anything." So I stayed silent. And that silence was harder than any fight. At Sonny's, business wobbled. Not because the food changed, not because the server slipped, but because poison spreads even when it's invisible. A customer would glance at me sideways, whisper to another, shake their head as if my very presence was suspect. We still had regulars, loyal ones, but doubt creeps easy. Marlene wasn't subtle. She marched out one afternoon, apron dusted with flour, cigarette clamped between her lips, and shouted across the dining room, "If anyone here believes that garbage, they can leave hungry." Silence fell. Forks froze halfway to mouths. And then, slowly, applause. Customers clapped, a few stood, some even whistled. The moment passed, but it planted something. A reminder, a truth may not shout, but it can still stand tall. That night, I sat in the kids' room, watching them sleep. Ellie's hand curled around a stuffed rabbit, Marcus sprawled like a starfish, mouth open in a dream roar. I thought about the bus ticket. About the lighter in Alan's photo. About how easy it would have been, years ago, to fold, to crawl back, to believe their version of me. But here was proof I hadn't. Breathing proof. Laughing proof. Living proof. The next morning, another call. Not Alan this time. My father. His voice, raspy, weaker than I remembered. Son, he said, the word awkward in his mouth. I'm sick. Bad heart. Doctors want surgery. We can't afford it. I stayed silent. He coughed. Strained. I made mistakes. Too many. But you blood. Family doesn't turn its back. Something inside me broke, not with sorrow, but with clarity. Blood doesn't make family. Love does. Loyalty does. Choices do. And he had made his choice when he drove away 15 years ago. I already turned my back, I said finally. And I'm not turning around. Click. I ended the call. Kendra stood in the doorway, listening. She didn't speak. Just walked over, rested her head against mine, and whispered, "Good." Days blurred. Work, kids, whispers, fear. But also laughter. Homework. Dinner at the table. Small victories that felt bigger than any defeat. Then one night, Poppy called again. Her voice was shaking. I left him, she said. I packed a bag and left. He's not sleeping. He's talking about showing up at your house. About proving something. I couldn't stay. Where are you now? I asked. With a friend. Safe. But you need to be careful. I thanked her. Promised her nothing. Because trust, once shattered, doesn't regrow. It stays in pieces, sharp enough to cut even when you try to hold it gently. That weekend, I installed more cameras. Reinforced the locks. Walked the perimeter of the house like a soldier before battle. Ellie asked if we were playing spies again. Marcus roared approval. Kendra just nodded, eyes heavy with the weight of everything unsaid. Sunday night, the kids asleep, we sat on the couch in silence. The hum of the refrigerator filled the room. Finally, Kendra said, "What if he never stops?" I stared at the dark TV screen, my own reflection staring back. Then I'll never stop either. Because that's what survival is. Not one fight. Not one victory. But choosing, every day, to keep standing. To keep breathing. To keep living in defiance of the people who tried to bury you. The past hadn't finished with me. Alan hadn't finished with me. But neither had I finished with him. And the next time he came close, I would be ready. Threats don't feel real until they touch your routine. Until they reach into something ordinary and leave a fingerprint. For weeks, Alan's pressure had been noise, ugly, relentless, exhausting noise, but still outside the glass. Then Tuesday happened. The day began with the comfort of predictable things. Ellie's dance bag on the counter. Marcus negotiating the number of blueberries required to qualify his pancakes as blueberry pancakes. Kendra scribbling appointments on a sticky note while her coffee steamed like a small, faithful engine. I left for the restaurant early. We kissed in the doorway, the kind of everyday kiss that becomes a hinge you don't notice until a door falls. At 2:11 p.m., my phone buzzed. The school. Calm voice. Professional words. But the room tilted anyway. "Mr. Reyes, your brother is here. He said he has permission to pick up Ellie and Marcus." My mouth went dry. "He does not," I said. "Please initiate the code." The line went quiet for a heartbeat, and then I heard the counselor's voice turn bright and friendly, the way adults sound when they're giving kids a test you want them to pass. The code word was simple. Something only we used at home. If the adult asking didn't know it, the kids weren't going anywhere. 30 seconds felt like a year. Then the counselor came back. "Your children are safe in the office." He didn't know it. "We've contacted security." I was already moving. Keys. Door. The world narrowing to a tunnel with 2 names at the end of it. I called Kendra on the run. She was closer. "I'm already in the car," she said. "Breathe." By the time I reached the school lot, a patrol car was already pulling away. Kendra stood inside the glass vestibule with Ellie and Marcus, one hand on each shoulder. Ellie's cheeks were flushed, angry. Marcus looked confused, offended that recess had been interrupted. I knelt. Ellie burst first. "He said he was your brother and that grandma said it was fine and then he didn't know the word and he got mad and they told him he had to leave and he said bad words but not the worst ones and I pulled her in." "You did perfect." Marcus scowled. "I told him I could roar." "I'm proud you waited for the code," I said. He nodded solemnly. "But next time can I roar?" "We'll discuss roar protocols later." The principal was kind without being soft. They had procedures. They followed them. They would document everything. They would flag any future attempts. A measured fortress. As we walked to the car, Kendra's hand found mine. She didn't squeeze. She anchored. At home, we made cocoa because rituals matter. We sat at the table and let the kids talk until the jagged edges dulled. After they went upstairs, we stood in the kitchen, the quiet loud enough to hurt. Kendra spoke first. "It's escalation." I nodded. "It's proof." The deputy from before came that evening. He watched the camera footage the school sent and wrote notes with a patience that felt like mercy. "This helps," he said. "It helps a lot." He explained the next steps. I knew them already, but hearing them again settled the tremor in my hands. "He'll push," the deputy added, almost gently. "People like him push until the ground tells them what it's made of." Ground. I wanted to be bedrock. The next day, a hearing date arrived faster than bureaucracy usually moves. Temporary orders becoming questions of permanence. I dreaded court. Not because I feared losing, I feared the theater. The performance my family excelled at. Rooms like that reward whoever can sound certain while holding nothing. On the morning of the hearing, Marlene showed up at the house at 6 a.m., no knock, just the back door opening like it was 1974. She dropped a paper bag on the counter. "Muffins," she said. "Sugar is armor." She looked at my tie, tugged it once, and muttered, "You fine." In the courtroom, the carpet swallowed sound. The judge was a woman with eyes like winter, and not unkind, but unwilling to be lied to. Alan sat across the aisle, jaw clenched, suit a half size too small, the kind of defiance that mistakes volume for strength. My father wasn't there. My mother was, small and damp with tears she could summon like weather. Poppy sat at the back, alone, spine straight. The case called. Oaths spoken. Evidence entered. The school video played on a screen, my kids tiny and brave, my brother trying to smile through a mask that wouldn't stay on. The judge paused it twice. Rewound once. Then she asked the only question that mattered. "Why were you there?" Alan's smile was all teeth. "Family." He said it like a magic word. The judge waited. He talked. He spun. He blamed. He blamed me for leaving, blamed circumstances for misunderstandings, blamed stress and love and anything that wouldn't talk back. When my turn came, I didn't make a speech. I told the truth like a ledger. Dates. Messages. The trophy on the porch. The photo of the torn ticket. The clinic review. The parking lot idling. The school. I felt my voice shake twice. I let it. The judge asked me one question. Do you fear him? I looked at Alan. At the boy who learned to be a weapon because it earned him a pat on the head. At the man who never learned how to be anything else. I fear what he chooses when he runs out of attention, I said. And I fear how close that is. The order became permanent. The judge's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Lines drawn in law don't shout. They simply exist, heavy as doors. Outside, Alan called me something I'd heard my entire childhood. It didn't land. Poppy stepped near as he stalked off. Her voice was a thread. I'm sorry, she said. I know that doesn't help. It does, I said. Because it's true. That night at Sunny's, we fed a packed house. Regulars came just to sit a little longer than usual, to tip a little bigger than sense required. Doug played bad bass in the corner because he said the room needed a heartbeat. It was off-key. It was perfect. When we got home, the house felt different. Not safer, safety isn't a switch, but steadier, like the frame had been inspected and declared sound. We tucked the kids in. Ellie asked if the code word still worked. Always, I said. Forever, Kendra added. Later, on the couch, the quiet returned, the good kind. I asked Kendra what she was thinking. She smiled, tired and bright. About the question the judge asked you, she said. Whether you fear him. I waited. Fear is fine, she said. Fear is honest. But it's not the point anymore. She leaned her head on my shoulder. The point is we are not running. That night, I slept. Not perfectly. But I slept. The kind that stitches instead of phrase. 2 days passed without incident. No calls. No posts. No cars idling at the corner. Calm can be a trap, but it can also be air. I used it. I took the kids for ice cream. I took Kendra to dinner at the place where we couldn't get a table once and now the hostess hugged us like cousins. I stood in the restaurant doorway during prep and watched my crew move like a single organism. These were the things I had built while the past sharpened its knives. And still, I knew better than to call it over. The third night, just before closing, the power flickered. Once. Twice. The kitchen went dark, then coughed back to life. The breaker had tripped before. Old buildings do that when summer breathes too hard. But the timing was a little too neat. I sent everyone home early and stayed to run a slow full system check. When I stepped into the alley to look at the panel, a shape shifted near the dumpster. Not big. Not threatening. A kid. 17, maybe. Hoodie, hands jammed into pockets. He startled when he saw me but didn't run. You need something? I asked. He looked at his shoes. Got asked to kill your lights, he muttered. $50. Didn't know you were still here. The anger that rose wasn't fire. It was cold. Who asked? He shook his head. Man with a nice car and a bad haircut. I almost smiled despite myself. Tell him you want 100 if he ever asks again, I said. The kid blinked. I'm not saying yes. I'm saying you make his nonsense expensive, I replied. And then you walk away. I pulled a 20 from my wallet, held it out. For walking away now. He stared at it, then at me, then took it like it might explode. You a cop? Just a man who wants to go home on time. He nodded, ghosted down the alley, dissolved into the summer dark. I stood there a long minute, listening to the hum of the units, the buzz of the sign, the city's tired breathing. Then I locked up and drove home the slow way, the way you drive when you need to be sure the world is still where you left it. The porch light was on. The camera blinked its quiet, green approval. Inside, Kendra sat cross-legged on the couch with medical articles fanned like cards. She looked up, searching my face the way you read a monitor. Small test, I said. We passed. She exhaled. Good. I sat beside her. We didn't speak for a while. Sometimes silence is a door you both agree to hold. When we finally went to bed, the house settled like a living thing. The kind of settling that says, if this beam holds, if this nail bites, if this roof remembers rain and chooses to stand anyway. As I drifted, I thought about the question I hadn't been able to shake, what do you do when the past refuses to be past? The answer wasn't heroic. It wasn't cinematic. It was ordinary and stubborn. You document. You call. You cook. You love. You sleep. You wake. You keep building. And if the past crosses a line, you don't chase it into the dark. You make the line brighter. Thicker. Real. I fell asleep holding Kendra's hand. Morning came. It always does. And I was ready for whatever it brought next. Calm can be honest. And it can be camouflage. For 3 days, life pretended to be ordinary. Breakfast negotiations. Lunch rush. Homework battles. The alarm blinked its patient grain. The porch camera saved quiet, boring files. I let my shoulders drop a half inch. Not relaxed. Just less braced. On the 4th day, we decided to take back some air. Marlene called it pie night. No speeches, no posts, just a room full of people eating what love looks like when you put it in an oven. She stacked apple, peach, pecan along the counter and told anyone who asked that sugar was cheaper than fear. The place filled. Doug tuned his bass and played 3 notes that didn't belong together and somehow still held hands. Regulars hugged without saying why. Strangers stayed for coffee refills they didn't need. It wasn't a fundraiser. It wasn't a protest. It was oxygen. I worked the room like a host at a wedding. Not shaking hands for politics. For proof. Proof that this life existed, solid and warm, no matter how loud the past banged on the door. We closed late. Staff trickled out in pairs. I did the slow checks, walk and latched, gas off, back door bar seated, breaker hum steady. The alley was damp from a brief, half-hearted rain. I breathed the air like it might remember me kindly. The first text came at 11:42 p.m. A number I didn't know. One line, his pacing. Poppy. I typed back, where? Her reply was a drop pin 2 blocks from the restaurant. Then, I'm sorry. I didn't run outside. I didn't grab a knife. I locked the front door. I called the deputy on speed dial. I said the words in the order the law required. Then I pulled up the camera grid on my phone and watched, heart ticking like a timer. A sedan crept past the alley mouth. Slowed. Stopped. The headlights went dark. The deputy answered on the second ring. Stay inside, he said. Units are close. A shadow separated from the dark and moved along the brick like it had lived there forever. Tall. Shoulders I recognized. Something in his hand that reflected a sliver of streetlight and then swallowed it. I told myself to breathe in 4s. In. Hold. Out. Hold. My thumb hovered over the alarm hotkey and didn't press it because sirens would eat the line. The deputy was riding toward me. The shadow paused at the dumpster. Bent. The shape of a cap twisted off a container. Liquid glugged. The smell found me even through the door, chemical, sweet, wrong. He stepped to the back door and splashed the threshold, then the bottom of the frame, careful like a painter edging trim. When he touched his pocket, I saw the cheap flick of a lighter. I yelled before I decided to. Don't. He froze. The alley seemed to lean in. He turned his head enough to give me half his face. Not surprised. Smiling. Not the wide grin he wore in court. A small one. Cruel and private. Go home, Alan. My voice sounded steady to my own ears. I hoped it did to his. Home, he repeated, like the word was a joke only he got. He lifted the lighter. Flicked. The wheel rasped. A spark climbed and died. Again. Again. I didn't wait for luck to pick a side. I hit the alarm. The restaurant found its lungs and screamed. Lights strobed. Somewhere inside, the system dumped in a tremor and locked the gas. My brother flinched, took one step back, then two. The sedan at the alley mouth coughed awake. Tires hissed on wet asphalt. The lighter went dark. Blue strobes painted the brick. Alan ran. The sedan fishtailed, corrected, vanished. Two patrol cars shouldered into the alley, sirens cutting mid-wail. The first officer stepped into the chemical shine, saw what I saw, and yelled for the fire crew already turning the corner. In a minute, the alley was full of ordered chaos, foam, shouts, hoses, radio code that translated to "not tonight." I unlocked the door for the deputy. He took one look at me, one look at the doorframe, and nodded like a chess player recognizes a move he hoped he wouldn't see. Cameras? He asked. Everything, I said. Angle from the alley. Angle from the lot. Audio on the back door. He exhaled through his nose. Not relief. Something like grim approval. Good. We watched the clip together on my phone. The paw. The lighter. My voice. His face turning just enough for the camera to say that's him. The deputy didn't smile. He didn't need to. This is enough, he said. This isn't noise anymore. The fire lieutenant cleared the frame, his boots leaving clean crescents in foam. No ignition, he said. Whatever he used will flash if he gets flame. You hit the alarm in time. He tilted his head toward me. Good timing. I nodded like I'd done something smart. The truth was, I'd done something scared at the right second. They took samples. They measured footprints. They did the work we're grateful for and never want to need. The deputy made 2 calls I didn't ask about and one he did in front of me. Pick him up, he said. Violation, attempted arson, stalking. He's going to bark. Let him. By the time I pulled into our driveway, it was nearly 2. The porch light was on. The camera blinked its green pulse. Inside, Kendra sat at the table with her hands wrapped around a mug that had been hot once. Paperwork lay open beside her, insurance, security service, a list of things to cancel or harden or double-check. Her eyes asked the question. I nodded. We have him on video. They're going to get him. She closed her eyes. Not in relief. In something quieter. Okay, she said. Okay. We didn't wake the kids. We checked them. We stood in the doorway and let our eyes count what our hands wanted to touch. Then we went back down and made a plan like we always do. Phone trees. Legal follow-ups. Staff messages at dawn so they heard it from us first. We didn't celebrate. We didn't catastrophize. We worked. At 3:27 a.m., the deputy texted one word, "In custody." I stared at it a long time. I thought I'd feel triumph. I didn't. What I felt was gravity shifting a degree. Enough that the house tilted toward morning and not midnight. Sleep came in stitches again. But the thread held. By noon, news traveled the way news does in a town that pretends it's a city. Man arrested after attempted fire behind local restaurant. No names in the public release. Everyone knew anyway. We didn't add a statement. We didn't need to. The cameras and the report were speaking in a language that doesn't care about gossip, facts. Poppy texted, "I'm at the station." I gave them what I had. 10 minutes later, a photo of a trunk inventory sheet. Gloves. A siphon hose. A printout of our kids' school calendar. The original restraining order, folded and worn. His copy. He'd been carrying the line he wasn't supposed to cross. The arraignment was fast. Charges read. Bail set with conditions that sounded like walls finally remembered how to be walls. A date marked on a calendar that already carried too many dates I wish I didn't remember. The judge from the protection hearing looked at Alan like she'd warned him once and didn't plan to again. After, my phone rang with a number I knew by muscle memory. My mother. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was a crackling whisper. He didn't mean it. He's sick. Your father is sick. The pivot was so clean it almost shone. From apology to leverage in one breath. I deleted it without listening twice. Then I stood in the kitchen and braced my hands on the counter until the need to argue with a ghost passed. That evening, we told the kids what they needed to know. Not the smell of the alley. Not the lighter. Not the trunk inventory. Just this, the person who tried to see you at school isn't allowed to be near us. The police stopped him because rules matter. We are safe. And we are smart. And we keep doing the code word because spies never retire. Ellie nodded solemnly, then asked if spies are allowed to eat dessert before dinner. Marcus roared at the idea of dessert first. We compromised with dessert second and loud roars outside. After they fell asleep, Kendra and I drove to the lake. No destination. Just water and night and a bench that remembered 100 couples who thought the world might let them rest if they sat very still. We didn't talk for a while. Breath made clouds in the cooler air. The water answered wind and nothing else. Finally, she said, "What are you holding that you don't need anymore?" I knew what she meant. I had known since the alley. When we got home, I pulled the box from the back of the closet. Paper. Proof. The past I used to keep like a talisman. I didn't take everything out. Not the lease. Not the first pay stub. Those were maps, and maps matter. I took the bus ticket. Torn. Taped. Photographed by a man who thought he could turn my choices into a weapon. We stood on the patio. I lit the grill with the care you give a ritual you want to remember as calm. The flame rose like a polite guest. I held the halves of the ticket over the heat and felt them warm. Not burn. Warm. I didn't want drama. I wanted decision. This isn't about them, I said. Kendra's voice was soft. No. It's about you. I let the paper go. It curled, blackened, sighed into ash. Not a victory. An ending. The smallest kind. The kind you can carry without it cutting you. We cleaned the restaurant together the next morning before the staff arrived. I scrubbed the back door until the chemical sheen was memory. Marlene arrived late, which meant right on time for her, and said nothing except, "Coffee." I handed her a mug. She took one sip and declared, "Terrible, Which is how she says you're still here. Around noon, the phone rang. Not a number I recognized. A hospital. A nurse. My father's name. Words about a heart and a surgery and consent. No request for money this time. Just the math of bodies when they break. I thanked her for calling. I gave her no instructions. I hung up. Kendra searched my face the way you read a storm map. Do you want to go? She asked. I thought about a hand on a steering wheel and a boy on hot concrete. I thought about a lighter's rasp and foam printed in crescents on an alley floor. I thought about a house where my children slept, and about the word home and how I had built it plank by plank with people who never once asked me to crawl. No, I said. But I don't want to hate him anymore either. That's not the same as forgiving, she said. I know. I exhaled. Maybe it's choosing not to carry him. We opened for dinner. We fed people. We laughed. We ran out of pie. Doug played 3 new wrong notes and apologized to the room. Nobody minded. The porch light blinked its green blink when we got home. The camera saved more footage of nothing. That night, I slept. Not because the story was over. Because I knew the next pages were mine to write. In the morning, a letter waited in the mailbox. Not a bill. Not a flyer. My name on the front in a tidy, careful hand I recognized even after years, my grandmother's. Forwarded. Delayed. Stamped and restamped by systems that weren't built for grace. I stood in the driveway and turned it over like it might answer questions I hadn't dared to ask. I carried it inside. I set it on the table. I called the kids for breakfast. Some doors you open when the house is awake. The envelope waded through breakfast like a quiet guest. White. Soft creased. My name in a hand that was careful even when the world wasn't, Grandma Rose's. The postmarks told a story of delay, forwarded, restamped, redirected by systems that don't understand urgency. I didn't open it while the kids were at the table. Some doors you open when the house is awake. We did shoes. Backpacks. Code word practice disguised as a game. Ellie rolled her eyes like a professional. Marcus roared because spies apparently roar now. I kissed Kendra in the doorway and told myself to breathe like a man who trusts the next minute to arrive. When the house exhaled into quiet, I set the envelope on the kitchen table. Kendra sat across from me, elbows on wood, chin on hands, watching the way doctors watch monitors, calm, ready, not pretending nothing could change. I slid a knife along the fold. Paper side. Inside, a one-page, lined, torn from a spiral notebook, a small recipe card that smelled faintly, impossibly, like cinnamon, and an old Polaroid, me at 10, apple slices on a cutting board, Grandma's hand on my shoulder, both of us pretending the kitchen was a kingdom. The note began without apology. Salvador, she wrote in the tight, disciplined script of someone who made lists to keep the world from slipping. If this reaches you late, know that I sent it early. I can't trust the others to deliver what you need when you need it. I felt the room lean. I could not pull you out of that house alone. I tried in the ways I had, 20 in a napkin, a quiet word, a place to sit where your father wouldn't follow. I was not brave enough to fight him head on. I am sorry for that, and I know the word sorry is too small. I hope I left you something bigger than money, the knowledge that one person in that family saw you clearly. I let my eyes close. The paper was steady in my hands. There are 2 kinds of leaving, she wrote. Running away and walking toward. The first fills your lungs with fear. The second fills them with air. If you must leave, walk. And when they come back asking for your breath, don't give them any. Give them bus fare. Kendra inhaled. We looked at each other. A smile that was not a joke, not a victory, just the shock of a pattern lining up. Grandma had written my future in a sentence I didn't know I was carrying. They will say blood is duty, she went on. They will say family is a rope. It is not. Family is a door you can close from the inside. It is also a door you can open for others, even if they were not born with your name. The recipe card was for apple pie. Not measurements, movements. Cold hands. Don't rush the water. Stop mixing when it looks wrong and feels right. At the bottom she had written, "You have good hands for pastry." I laughed, a small, surprised sound that hurt and helped at once. Marlene's voice echoed inside it. The last paragraph was short. If I am gone when you read this, cook for people who are hungry and forgive yourself for not feeding those who bite. If you ever have children, teach them that safety is a sound and love is a chore you do every day. When the past knocks, answer with a life. It didn't end with love. It ended with my name. That was her love. I put the letter down like it was heavy and holy. We sat in the quiet. The refrigerator hummed. Somewhere down the block, a truck shifted gears. Kendra reached for my hand and squeezed once, the way she does when the answer is already inside the question. "What do you want to do with it?" she asked. "Keep it," I said. "Where it can't become a weapon." I scanned the Polaroid again. A boy too careful with a knife. A woman who knew that caution is not the same as fear. I slid the photo into the frame on the mantel behind the kids' school pictures, not front and center, not buried, present. The hospital called again before lunch. A different nurse. Same script. My father's chart. My father's heart. Words about consent. I could hear the professionalism wrapped around fatigue. "I'm not his decision maker," I said. "Please remove my number as his emergency contact." "Yes, sir," she said. "I'll note it." I almost added, "I hope he makes it through." I didn't, not because I wished him harm, but because my hope no longer belonged in his room. I texted the deputy an update about the letter and the hospital call, because documentation is a discipline. He replied with a thumbs up and, a minute later, arson charge confirmed. DA's office will call. The world kept doing what it does, stacking logistics on top of emotion like plates after a meal. I drove to the diner with the letter in my backpack, felt silly for bringing it, felt steadier for having it near. Marlene was already on the line, terrorizing a pie crust with tenderness. I laid the recipe card beside her elbow. She read it once, twice, then didn't look up. "Cold hands," she said. "Never told you that one because I thought you'd take it as an insult." "I take it as an inheritance," I said. She nodded, still not looking up, and said, "Good." Lunch swelled and broke and swelled again. Work is a metronome, it gives your heart something outside your body to follow. In the slow hour between rushes, Poppy texted. "They arraigned him." I told the truth. "If you hate me, I understand." I typed, erased, typed again. "I don't hate you. Be safe." She replied, trying. Then, "Thank you." After school, Ellie and Marcus launched into the kitchen like weather. Snacks. Shoes everywhere. The code word repeated for the dog because he needed practice. He does not. He cannot. He barked anyway, committed to the bit. I watched them and thought about Grandma's line, "Safety is a sound." I realized I could name it now. The clatter of keys in a dish at a decent hour. A washing machine on its last spin. Kendra humming something shapeless while she checks the calendar. The sound of ordinary life refusing to be impressed by threats. We told the kids about the letter in the smallest way. Grandma Rose wrote Daddy a note a long time ago and it found us today. Ellie asked if it had a map inside. Marcus asked if there was treasure. Yes, I said. But it's the kind of treasure you keep in your head. After bedtime, Kendra, and I took 2 mugs to the back steps. Night has different rules when the house is sleeping and the cameras blink friendly. "What else do you want to put down?" she asked. "What else are you still carrying?" I thought of my mother's voicemail after the arrest. He didn't mean it. "Your father is sick." I thought of the tilt in her voice, how grief can be a tool if you never learned another. "Guilt," I said. "For not going. For not fixing what I didn't break. For not wanting to fix it." "Let's call that by its name," she said gently. "Boundary." I nodded. The word fit like a door settling into its frame. The DA called the next morning. Formal tone, careful language. They had the footage. They had the samples. They had the violation of the order and the attempted arson charge. There would be a plea offer. There would be a trial if he wanted the performance. Either way, the state would do the heavy lifting so I didn't have to. "Will I have to testify?" I asked. "Likely," she said, "but the video is the spine." I thanked her. I meant it. After the call, I drove to the school with a box of donuts that would make the front office forgive almost anything. I thanked the counselor for the code word drill, the principal for the locks that worked, the secretary for the calm voice on the phone. Safety is a sound. It is also a chorus of people doing their job on a Tuesday. On the way out, I passed a bulletin board full of drawings. Crayon houses with sunflowers taller than roofs. Blue skies that never existed in meteorology but exist in childhood. I stood there long enough for a teacher to ask if I was lost. "Found," I said, and we both laughed because the line sounded like something from a movie and also felt exactly true. That evening, I called the hospital back. Told the nurse I wanted to leave a note on the chart. Not medical. Human. She paused, then said, "Go ahead." I said, "Tell the team I hope he cooperates with his care. Tell them I'm not involved in his decisions. Tell them I'm sorry they have to navigate the parts of him I knew too well." She was quiet for a second that held more than politeness. "We see a lot," she said softly. "I'll add your note." I didn't call my mother. I didn't call Alan. I wrote a short letter instead and didn't mail it. It wasn't for them. It was for the part of me that still knocked on old doors. "I am not your rope," I wrote. "I am not your ladder. I am not your apology. I am my family's home." I folded it and slid it into Grandma's envelope. The box at the back of the closet got lighter without losing anything I needed. Before bed, Ellie asked if spies ever retire. "They get promoted," I said. "To builders." She seemed satisfied with the rank. Marcus asked if builders roar. "Only at the right time," I said. He considered this and decided tomorrow would be the right time. "We'll negotiate." When the house finally settled, I read Grandma's letter again, slower, tracing the dips of her pen like braille for the heart. "When the past knocks, answer with a life." Part of me wanted the story to end there. Clean. Framed. But life isn't a frame. It's a kitchen light at 5:42 a.m., coffee breath, shoes by the door, a to-do list that always makes room for another line. The past would knock again. Courts would calendar. People would gossip. There would be receipts to file and a back door to scrub and a pie to cut and a laugh to earn and a night to sleep through on purpose. I went to bed with my hand in Kendra's, the letter on the nightstand like a compass that doesn't point north so much as home. Tomorrow, I would take one more step from running away to walking toward. And when they came hungry again, I knew exactly what I'd give them. Not breath. Bus fare. And then I'd go back to the kitchen, where the recipe isn't just a pie. It's a plan. The morning of the hearing, I woke before the alarm and washed my hands in water cold enough to sting. "Cold hands," Grandma wrote. "Don't rush the water." I measured flour by feel, cut butter in like rain, stopped mixing when it looked wrong and felt right. Apple pie at dawn. Not for celebration. For steadiness. Kendra came down in a sweatshirt and tied her hair back with the same rubber band she uses for everything important. She didn't say, "Are you ready?" She poured coffee and said, "We'll go. We'll tell the truth. We'll come home." Safety is a sound. It's also a sentence. Courtrooms eat noise. The same judge from before. The same carpet that swallows footsteps. Alan looked smaller. Not younger. Smaller. The kind of shrinking that happens when your version of yourself meets a wall with a name. He didn't look at me. He smiled at no one. The DA said the words in the order the law requires. Violation of a protective order. Attempted arson. Stalking. The plea came like something he'd rehearsed alone in a mirror. No drama. No confetti. Just a man choosing the path with the least light. The sentence wasn't a movie. 18 months. Some inside. Some out. Classes he'd sneer through. Treatment he'd call a joke and maybe, if we are lucky, still learn from. The no-contact order renewed like steel. The judge asked if I wanted to speak. I stood and told the truth like a ledger. We are raising children. We are running a restaurant. We are trying, every day, to be boring on purpose. I said, I don't want revenge. I want distance. Her pen moved. The order became ink. Outside, Poppy stood with her hands jammed in her coat, eyes red from the kind of crying that happens in parking lots. I filed, she said. I'm leaving him. I said, good. Then added, because truth deserves more than minimum wage, thank you for telling the truth. She nodded. I'm sorry it took this long. Me too, I said. And that was enough. The hospital called that afternoon. Surgery completed. Prognosis cautious. Words like compliant and follow-up and monitoring stacked like blocks. I listened. I didn't ask for more. When the nurse asked if there was anything they should tell my father, I said, tell him his son hopes he listens to his doctors. That's as close to love as I have without lying. It's also what I would want a stranger to say for me. That night, pie. Not because we won anything. Because we finished something and needed to begin again. We ate at the table with the kids, and the code word turned into a joke about dinosaurs. Marcus insisted T-Rex is our new password. Ellie said T-Rex is too obvious. Kendra said spies now work in encryption. We compromised the way families do, with nonsense and a straight face. In the days that followed, quiet arrived like a shy guest, hovering in the hallway, then finally taking a chair. No cars idled. No blocked calls. The porch camera saved hours of nothing and then more nothing, footage I wanted to frame. Business steadied. Regulars drifted back from the brink of doubt. Marlene declared the crust acceptable and then, to avoid sentimentality, terrified a sack of onions. Doug learned a fourth note. It didn't belong either. We made it work. I drove to the shelter on a Tuesday between lunch and dinner, apple pie wrapped in a towel like it needed tucking in. The manager had a different name now, a different face, the same eyes that know the inventory of ordinary pain. I said, years ago, I slept here. She nodded like that sentence deserves no surprise. I asked if we could start a fund, no speeches, no photos on the wall, just small envelopes marked bus fare plus ID. She smiled. Not big. Real. People think salvation is a couch, she said. Sometimes it's a ticket and a document. We shook hands. Paperwork is its own kind of prayer. I left the pie behind and drove the long way to the diner, the way that let the town show me all the nobody-noticed things that keep a place alive. At home, the envelope from Grandma lived on the mantel behind school photos and a rock Marcus swears is a meteorite. I read her letter once a day for a week. Then every few days. Then whenever my chest felt crowded. Her sentences wore grooves in me. There are two kinds of leaving. Family is a door you can close from the inside. When the past knocks, answer with a life. I put the recipe card in a zip bag because inheritances deserve plastic sometimes. One evening, the kids asked to bake. We washed hands until they squealed. I showed Ellie how butter should look like coins, not sand. I showed Marcus how to pinch the edge with 2 fingers and pretend it's a wave. Kendra leaned in the doorway, arms crossed, smiling like she's memoizing us on purpose. The oven preheated. The kitchen turned into a small sun. Safety has a smell, too. Flour and cinnamon and something that used to be fear cooling into steadiness. News about my father filtered in sideways. A text from a cousin. A note from the hospital that he had left against advice and then returned. Always the fight. Never the fix. I didn't chase details. I mailed a card addressed to the nursing staff instead, a thank you for doing work that hurts and matters. I didn't sign my last name. I didn't need to. Some gratitude is better anonymous. Alan wrote from inside. A letter that tried on 20 different voices, jokes that didn't land, regrets shaped like hooks, apologies that came with conditions. I read it once at the sink and let the water run until the page bled. I didn't respond. Not because I wanted to hurt him. Because context is a kind of consent. I won't give it. Bus fare. Not breath. Spring came late. The lake thawed in stubborn pieces. We took the kids out to skim stones that sank instead of skipping. They laughed anyway. Failure makes a good toy when it's safe. On the walk back, Ellie slipped her hand into mine and said, "Are we done being spies?" "Promoted," I said. "To builders." She nodded like she'd been expecting the raise. Marcus roared in approval because builders, it turns out, also roar. At the restaurant, we made pie night a calendar thing. Not a statement. An invitation to breathe together. Sometimes the room is full. Sometimes it's quiet. We light a candle for the ones who didn't have a chair to sit in tonight and cut slices for the ones who did. On the chalkboard near the kitchen door, I wrote a sentence I can see when the tickets start to blur, and we are here to feed the hungry and to forgive ourselves for not feeding those who bite. Marlene called it corny. Then she left it up. I changed the code word. Not because I had to. Because ceremony matters. We gathered in the hallway like other families gather around trees. I said the new word and made a face like it was top secret. Ellie rolled her eyes like a professional. Marcus tried it on in a whisper, then a roar. It fit both ways. On the anniversary of the day they left me, I drove to the rest stop that isn't really a rest stop anymore, new paint, new vending machines, the bathroom tiled in a way that wants you to forget. I parked and sat and listened for the boy I had been. I didn't hear him. Not because he's gone. Because he got where he was going. I took 2 envelopes out of the glove box. One had a bus ticket in it. I left it on the bulletin board under a flyer for a lost dog. No note. Nobody needs a lecture with directions. The second envelope had $20 and a napkin. I put it in the shelter's donation box on my way back into town. And then I went to work. That night, after close, I scrubbed the back door. Not because it needed it. Because ritual keeps memory honest. The frame is scarred if you know where to look. I know where to look. I let my fingers find the grooves and then I wiped them clean. We put the kids to bed. Kendra ran her hand down the banister like she was blessing it. On the patio, the air finally remembered how to be soft. She asked, "What are you walking toward now?" I thought about it, Then answered the way you answer when you're done auditioning for anyone. Breakfast. Lunch. Dinner. The shelter fund. Your laugh. Their homework. The next pie. The quiet. When the house settled, I took Grandma's letter out one more time. I read the last line again. When the past knocks, answer with a life. I slid it back into the envelope and put it on the shelf where I keep things I want my kids to find on a good day. I don't know how many more knocks there will be. Family is not a story you finish. It's a door you learn to hold from the inside. But now, when the knock comes, I know what to say. Not with speeches. With breakfast. With a lock that works. With laughter that interrupts fear mid-sentence. With a restaurant that smells like cinnamon and second chances. I didn't make it back home. I built one. A year is a strange unit. Long enough for seasons to do their full trick. Short enough that the old ache can still find you on a Tuesday. I measured mine in smaller things. Coffee filters stacked the right way. Homework folders that actually came home. The porch camera filling hard drives with hours of blessed nothing. We kept our rituals. Code word practice when no one needed it. Pie nights when everyone did. The shelter fund grew without speeches. We called it bus fare plus ID because names should tell the truth. A cashier slipped in singles. A contractor left an envelope with grease on it and didn't say a word. One afternoon, a young woman picked up a folder, hands shaking like she was holding something illegal. She whispered, "Is this really for me?" I said, "Yes." She said, "Then I'll walk." That was all. That was everything. We didn't take a photo. Some victories don't want a frame. News about my father came in the way weather does, through the window, whether you want it or not. He survived the surgery. He did not survive himself. Left AMA. Returned. Left again. The last message came from a cousin who thinks silence is disrespect. Service on Saturday. Your mother wants you there. Want is an interesting verb at a funeral. Kendra read the text over my shoulder. Do you need to go? She asked. Need and want don't share a locker. I sat with it. I asked myself whose comfort I'd be chasing. His? Mine? Theirs? In the end, I sent flowers. A card for the staff who had done the hard kindness. I didn't go. My mother left 2 voicemails. Tears have texture over a phone. It was the texture I grew up with. Sorry and asking, braided tight. I saved the messages for a day, then deleted them while the washing machine thumped toward rinse. Not out of anger. Out of alignment. Boundaries are carpentry. If you've measured twice, you cut once. Alan wrote from the program with the kind of sincerity you learn when a counselor is taking notes. He asked for a fresh start. He asked for a letter to the court. He did not ask what my children like to eat, because he still doesn't know they like everything if it's called second dinner. I didn't reply. The DA didn't need me to build a bridge that crossed the same river twice. I filed his letter with the others, in a folder labeled Context is Consent. It stayed closed. At Sonny's, life found the shape it wanted. We opened a small bakery case because pie nights had taught us watch time. Cinnamon rolls before jazz. Scones that were prettier than they tasted until Marlene stopped caring about pretty. Doug played bass in the corner every other Friday like a heartbeat learning to trust itself. He hit 5 notes now. None of them matched. The room loved him for it. Ellie learned to braid. Marcus learned to whistle exactly 1 note and deploy it with tactical cruelty. Kendra cut her clinic days to 3 and started a free class for first-time parents who were brave enough to admit they were scared. I watched her talk about sleep like it was a country you can still visit if you bring a friend. I fell in love with her again in a folding chair. The day the school asked for parent volunteers, I caught myself checking the parking lot twice before I went inside. Habit, not fear. Good habits are shells you've outgrown but keep near in case weather changes. I handed out name tags. I fixed a printer the way men try to fix things, soft talk and a restart. A boy who wasn't mine asked if I was a cop. No, I said. Baker. He nodded like that I tranked everything. Grandma's letter lived on the mantel. I didn't read it every day anymore. Some compasses you learn by muscle. On a quiet Sunday, I took the recipe card down and laminated it at the office store where the clerk pretended not to smile. Cold hands. Don't rush the water. Stop mixing when it looks wrong and feels right. I taped a copy inside the walk-in where only the people who needed it would see. Marlene pretended not to notice, which is how she says thank you. Spring arrived like it had an apology to make for last year. On the first warm evening, we took the kids to the lake with stale bread for ducks and fresh patience for each other. Ellie skipped a stone that actually skipped. Marcus announced he had invented a new roar called construction roar because builders must roar sometimes. He demoed it. A jogger clapped like he'd paid for tickets. On the drive home, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't have saved and never would. Poppy. I answered on speaker because sunlight makes bravery cheaper. He's out, she said. Staying with his friend. Probation officer seems tired in the professional way. I'm in a new place. New locks. New job. I wanted you to know. I pulled over because some bits of news deserve stillness. Thank you, I said. Do you need anything? She laughed the way relief laughs when it has the floor for once. I need your life to keep going, she said. So mine can, too. I told her it would. I meant it. A week later, the deputy stopped by with a coffee he didn't like and a smile he didn't fight. I can't talk details, he said. But it's quiet on our end. Keep doing what you're doing. Some men ask how to be useful in a sentence. He just was. We visited the rest stop on purpose this time. The kids thought it was a field trip about vending machines. The bathroom smelled like bleach and forgiveness. I stood in the sun and let the asphalt tell me it didn't remember our names. Good. I took 2 envelopes from the glove box. Bus ticket. 20 and a napkin. I left them where strangers might find them. I didn't explain to the kids. They watched the highway and invented stories about where everyone was going. Every destination was the beach. I love their optimism. I covered it. At home, I found a box I hadn't opened in years. Not the one with the torn ticket. The other one. Photos with corners rounded by time. A Polaroid of me and Grandma at the counter. A shot of Marlene pretending to hate the camera. A blurry picture of Kendra, hair up, tongue between teeth, teaching Ellie to hold a knife with respect. I spread them on the table like maps. Builders save maps. Spies don't need them. Pie Night turned into Blueprint Night because Ellie renamed it and no one argued. We started inviting people to teach tiny, useful things in 10 minutes. How to use a level. How to check the breaker box without crying. How to talk to a bill collector without letting them tell you who you are. How to chop an onion without losing a finger. We kept the donation jar. We added a second labeled tickets plus docs. The caseworker from the shelter came once and cried after she took her slice out back. I pretended not to see. Sometimes dignity needs you to face the other way. Alan tried once, just once, to circle. A burner account posted about how success tastes better when you season it with betrayal. It didn't land. The room had changed. The story had changed. Or maybe I had. I didn't respond. Kendra didn't even send me the screenshot. We ate dinner and argued about whether a T-Rex could be a vegetarian if the vegetables begged. On the anniversary of the court's first order, I wrote one letter I did send. Not to them. To the kid who might someday stand in an alley with a lighter he can't quite make catch. You are not a weapon for someone else's war. Walk away before the spark chooses for you. If you need bus fare and a name that belongs to you, we have both. I taped it under the walk-in recipe card where the night crew takes breaks when the world is heavy. The next morning, someone had underlined the line about the lighter. Nobody said a word. The trash was taken out on time. The donuts vanished faster than usual. Ellie started reading chapter books to Marcus because that's how power should be used. She changed the code word without asking and wrote it on a sticky note in a cipher only she understands. I told her spies get promoted to architects. She said architects get promoted to mayors. Marcus roared approval because mayors must roar sometimes, too. One afternoon, the hospital called again. Not my father. A nurse who remembered my voice. He's moved to rehab, she said. He asked us to tell you he's doing the work. I said, I hope he keeps doing it. She paused. You sound like you mean that. I do, I said. Meaning isn't the same as invitation. She understood. That night, I took Grandma's letter down and read it in the doorway while Kendra set the table and the kids argued about forks like they were policy. When the past knocks, answer with a life. The sentence has a way of changing tone without changing meaning. It used to sound like a dare. Now it sounds like directions. After dinner, we walked the perimeter like always. Not because danger was near. Because peace is work. Locks checked. Camera light green. Back door scrubbed though it didn't need it. In the kitchen, I felt the dough under my hands go from wrong to right and thought about all the times I'd done that without noticing. Cold hands. Don't rush the water. Stop mixing when it looks wrong and feels right. Recipes are just stories you can eat. In bed, Kendra asked, what are we building next? Not ambitious. Curious. I pictured a small office at the shelter with a sign that says documents here in 2 languages. I pictured a bulletin board that always has one bus ticket pinned to it. I pictured our kids older, rolling their eyes at how much we care, and caring anyway. Nothing fancy, I said. Just more of this. She smiled in the dark. Good. Morning would come. It always does. We would pack lunches. We would set the code word in a new cipher. We would sign the check for the shelter fund and fix the leaky faucet and teach Marcus the difference between a roar and a yell. And if the past ever knocked again, we wouldn't rehearse speeches. We'd answer with the only thing that ever held. Breakfast. Bus fare. Blueprints. A lock that works. A table that seats 4 and 1 more if you're hungry. I didn't make it back home. I stayed.